started to initially formulate relationship with women, which was really, really weird for me. And through that, I kind of started to embrace a little bit more my feminine side. And in doing so, I just kept hearing the replay of, well, that's just how men are. And you just got to accept it. Like, it is what it is. And so going into now relationships with partners, it was just like, oh, well, this is just standard. You kind of have to just suck it up, more or less. And it didn't help when you go to your family members, i.e. your parent, your mother, or your aunt, or whoever, and they just reaffirm that. And so slowly but surely, it just became something where I started to notice how my partners wanted to control me. The very thing that they loved about me was the very thing that they hated almost. They didn't want me going out and with my friends, or they, wanted to know who I was talking to, or if I didn't answer their phone calls, that became an argument. It was as if I had to cater my entire life around them and take into account what they wanted, whenever, however. And I slowly became complacent to that and slowly gave into it until it finally boiled over. And it was just like, oh, I literally physically can't even do it anymore. Even if I wanted to, it's almost impossible, because every time I tried to actually give into it and be complacent, my body would actually physically react. I was breaking out in hives. I was breaking out in these rashes that to this day, Western medicine has not been able to identify, to really give it a phrase. Initially, I thought it was psoriasis, then I thought it was eczema, and biopsies done, neither one.
It's anger.
Exactly. And it was once I accepted anger, interesting enough, once I accepted the rationale that it was anger and that I had a lot of anger, it was the moment where my skin literally changed and the coloring changed, the itching and the flaringness changed. And then I started noticing how closely related. So for example, if I was in a situation that I didn't want to voice myself, my skin would actually react. So it was like my skin was saying, you got to say something. And so when I would say something, the inflammation and the itchiness would actually subside. So that was really interesting to kind of like, ooh, the light bulb turning on and saying, wow, anger has a place, and anger really has a physical component to it. It's just not an emotion, and we are not emotional beings, as we like to get labeled, right? Or the angry woman, as another phrase that we get it labeled as. It actually plays a part. And that applies also to other emotions like grief and like fear. It does physically also appear as well.
So what I hear you saying is kind of you grew up almost just kind of bucking the system, seeing the women that you grew up with, your elders, whether it was aunties and your mom and cousins, whatever, and seeing them be submissive and you kind of starting out being like, forget that, that's not going to be me, walking around with this kind of chip in your shoulder. And then falling almost exactly into the pattern of behavior. It's kind of hard to not become our parents, right? It takes a lot of concerted effort day in and day out not to fall into those patterns, those generational patterns, because we're wired in it. There's a part of us that inherits these character traits in our genetics. But it's interesting. So you had to have been really in touch with your body when, let's say in college, because I think a lot of people wouldn't have been able to make the connection that, oh, when I'm not speaking up for myself, this is what's going on with my skin.